Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're using the intense microclimate of Forest Park, Illinois as our ultimate case study for home survival. We're looking at a place where extreme weather acts as a relentless natural stress test for one of the most critical, yet honestly most ignored parts of your entire house. Yup, we're talking about your roof.
So, you really have to ask yourself, will your roof actually survive the next winter? And what is the actual bottom line cost of ignoring what looks like just a tiny leak? The stakes here are absolutely massive. A roof doesn't just fail overnight, right? It fails slowly, quietly, and then boom, all at once. What starts as a seemingly harmless drip can rapidly snowball into a catastrophic structural nightmare that will completely drain your savings.
All right, let's get into part one, the Midwest Weather War and Forest Park's invisible enemies.
What's really fascinating here is the geography. Forest Park sits exactly where Lake Michigan's unpredictable weather systems violently collide with continental air masses. It's a literal weather war zone out there. This creates hyper-local phenomena, like the I-290 wind tunnel. The Eisenhower Expressway funnels severe wind right across the community, which creates this extreme uplift pressure. Imagine an invisible hand constantly, violently tearing at the shingles on your home, testing the grip of every single nail, day after day. If a roof lacks the proper wind rating, trust me, this tunnel's going to find out very quickly.
And it's not just the wind we have to worry about. In the Midwest, winter temperatures can swing wildly. We're talking from 10 degrees up to 40 degrees in a single week. That fuels what's known as the freeze-thaw cycle. Here's how it works. Water sneaks into these tiny little gaps in your shingles. Then, overnight, the temperature plummets, that water freezes, expands, and literally splits the roofing material wide open. This process repeats dozens of times a winter. It's just actively destroying your home's armor from the inside out.
Which brings us to a really fascinating yet highly destructive process called the ice dam. Surprisingly enough, this actually starts inside your house. Heat escapes through a poorly insulated attic, melting the snow sitting on top of your roof. That melted water trickles down to the colder roof edge and refreezes, creating a solid ridge of ice. Now you've got a newly formed blockade forcing new melting water to flow backward right under your shingles. It's a devastating exterior problem caused entirely by interior heat loss. Crazy, right?
And that trapped water, well, it has to go somewhere. And that somewhere is right inside your house. It completely saturates your attic insulation, rendering it totally useless and driving up your heating bills in the process. Then it seeps down into the framing, rotting out the wall cavities, and eventually destroys your ceiling drywall. By the time you actually notice the stain, the structural damage is already severe and incredibly expensive to fix.
So let's move on to part two, spotting the silent killers and the warning signs to look for before disaster strikes.
Your roof is actually trying to communicate with you long before it completely fails. You just have to know what to look for. If you're cleaning your gutters and see heavy granule accumulation, your shingles are losing their waterproofing. Look up at the roof. Are the shingles tabs curled, buckling, or cracked? That means the wind can easily catch them. Pay close attention to any water stains appearing on interior ceilings. Remember, if you see a stain inside, the leak isn't new. It's been destroying things in your attic for weeks. And finally, if the metal flashing sealants around chimneys and vents looks like it's deteriorating, water is definitely already getting in.
Once you spot a problem, you're faced with the ultimate financial dilemma. Do you repair or do you replace? Professional roofers use a very specific metric to decide this. If your roof still has at least 10 good years left in its overall lifespan, a surgical, targeted repair makes total sense. Fix the bad flashing, replace a few missing shingles, you're good. But if you've got heavy granule loss and curling tabs all over the place, patching is just throwing your hard-earned money down the drain. At that point, it requires a complete tear-off straight down to the decking.
That takes us to part three, the three-step solution. Let's look at how the pros actually fix the problem. When a roof does need serious work, true professionals follow a very clear three-step execution plan. Step 1 is the inspection and estimate. Real pros don't just eyeball it from the driveway, they physically climb into your dark attic to trace water stains back to the true source of the leak. Step 2 is execution. This means doing it right, pulling the required village permits and relentlessly protecting your property. They'll even use magnetic sweepers on your driveway every single day so you don't end up with a rusty nail in your car tire. Finally, step 3 is the inspection and warranty. That's a final walkthrough to verify the workmanship and hand over all the proper documentation.
And professional execution absolutely matters because of strict building codes.
For instance, did you know Illinois building code legally requires underlayment to act as an ice barrier, extending from the eaves up to at least 24 inches past the interior wall lines? This is specifically designed to combat those devastating ice dams we talked about earlier. Cut-rate roofers will totally skip this invisible step just to save a few bucks, and you won't even know they did it until your ceiling is ruined the following winter.
Okay, let's get into part 4. This is crucial: navigating costs and scams. Consider this your financial survival guide.
When your roof is leaking, you're vulnerable. And believe me, bad actors know it. So let's anchor ourselves with some real numbers. For a standard Midwest property, say a 20 by 20 detached garage, you're looking at an estimated replacement range of about $1,500 to $4,000. For a standard 2,000 square foot home, that jumps to somewhere between $8,000 and $18,000. Now, obviously, these numbers will fluctuate based on whether you go with basic asphalt or premium architectural shingles, but this gives you a very real baseline to prepare for.
But keep this in mind, 40 to 60% of your total replacement cost, it goes purely to labor. And honestly, it absolutely should. Skilled installation, stuff like proper flashing, precise nailing techniques, and getting the ventilation right is the single biggest factor that determines if your roof lasts 5 years or 25 years. Never, ever sacrifice skilled labor just to accept a cheap bid.
Which brings us to a highly practical and frankly scary question. How can you actually tell if a roofer is lying to you? When the nasty storms roll through and the quotes start flying at you from every direction, how do you protect your wallet?
Well, there are undeniable contactor red flags you absolutely must watch for. If they only have a cell phone number and no physical local business address, run. If they demand full payment up front before starting or insist on cash only, that is a massive red flag. Standard practice is a deposit with progress payments along the way. Reject any today-only, high-pressure pricing. That's just a classic manipulation tactic. Beware of vague estimates that don't have line-item material specs, and be incredibly wary of out-of-town door knockers who magically appear on your porch the morning after a big hailstorm.
On the flip side, there are things you should never say to a contractor because these phrases will instantly destroy your negotiating leverage. First, never say, "I already have my insurance money approved." Doing that practically guarantees they'll just inflate their quote to match your exact payout. Also, avoid saying, "I don't have any other bids yet," because that completely removes their incentive to be competitive. And whatever you do, never ask them to inflate an insurance estimate to pay for upgrades. I mean, that is literal insurance fraud. Just don't do it.
And speaking of insurance, let's talk about the ticking clock on your policy. You might think you're covered indefinitely, right? But an aging roof secretly depreciates your coverage. In year 1, you've got standard comprehensive replacement coverage. Awesome. But by year 15, a lot of carriers begin limiting claims strictly to actual cash value, which means you only get a heavily depreciated payout. And by year 20, most carriers will outright refuse claims or just completely non-renew your homeowner's policy altogether because the liability is just too high.
So that leaves us with one final critical question to think about. Is your 15-year-old roof quietly voiding your homeowner's insurance policy right now? Seriously, think about the exact age of your own roof. Think about those invisible wind tunnels and the brutal freeze-thaw cycles grinding away at your shingles year after year. Knowledge really is your best defense here. Don't wait until water is literally running down your interior walls to find out the true state of your home's armor. Take a look before it's too late.